Welcome to Fuel. Fuel stands for Finance, Unity, Empowerment, Legacy. Join Dennis, Dr. Jackie, and Mac as they explore the topic of changing our mindsets in the financial environment, Part 1. Enjoy. So first of all, it's so good to see my people now that I'm sitting here in the United States. Dennis, you actually look clearer now.
It's like I told you before, I was going to say welcome home, but you left home to come home. And I see your sense of humor has not improved. So maybe you need to go back for a couple more weeks.
This technology is amazing. So beyond the fact that you may not have the blips and the Wi-Fi, we can do this wherever and still share our information and share our love for self.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Well, honestly, Dr. Jackie, love of self has never escaped Mr. Sawyer.
We should have a romper room moment where we define what these words mean, because he always exudes his intelligence by throwing these big words, and I don't know what they mean. He called me a narcissist.
Yes.
He called me handsome. I know what that word means, so don't worry about that one.
But let's start with narcissist, because I love that word. So narcissist simply means that Dennis Sawyer has determined that he is the master and commander of his personal universe.
If it ain't about me, what is it about? I don't understand. Say it again. He always talks about my hair, but my hair is really curly. I guess you can't really see online, and it's really hard to make it as smooth as a bald head. But it is what it is. I have the blessing of my mother and my father, who both my mother had really long straight hair, and my daughter has really long straight hair. She didn't buy it in the store. And my father has really, really curly hair, so that it allows me to be beautiful from top to bottom.
Oh my gosh. Well, you know what, Dr. Jackie, I'm going to actually be the mature one this time. So this actually works with his narcissistic self. This actually works within what we have decided to talk about today. Because
amazing.
Isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing?
We can't spend the whole time talking about me.
How his self-importance and self-indulgence is actually going to work for our good.
Hey, if you don't say it, no one else will.
And you're right. In your case, no one else will.
Hey. It's your world, and you got to know your place in your world, in your life. Now, when you interact with other people, like Dr. Jackie, who has a PhD and multiple masters and all that, you just got to know that she's the smart one in the room. And then you got to have that cousin, that friend who you hang around, but you can't wait till they leave again. But and then you got to have beauty. Well, Dr. Jackie is beauty, but the other kind of beauty, the masculine alpha male with the curly hair and all that kind of crap, But truthfully, when you're out there in the world, you run across people all the time that, look good. But so what? You got to look good to yourself. And if you're not willing to stand up for yourself, then nobody will. I mean, you see how Matt calls me narcissist and handsome. I only agree with half of what he says.
Me too. I only agree with half of what you just said.
So I'm going to stop you right here and pick up one of your words since we're talking about defining words, and that's agree. So many times we hear people say things about us and we agree with them when maybe we should really analyze and decide not to take in, because they may say things that are negative and we just assume that they are more knowledgeable or beautiful or whatever, and agree that that is who we are. And we're about, so rather it is at the point of being narcissistic or not, I don't know that we need to define it there, but more of what we're taking in into our spirit and our essence of who we are. Because as we project the blessings, as we project the positivity, we can also project the negativity that we hear. And therefore, I'm taking your word, Dennis, agree, and let's agree to define ourselves in a positive way, agree to define ourselves in our capabilities. Rather, someone else acknowledges that external acknowledgement is not a necessity, it is the internal agreement of who we are.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I'll start with, my mother used to always say, you're going to grow up and be something big. You're going to grow up and do this. And I tried to fill in for what she said. And when I start trying to ride a bike, you have some people say you'll never be able to ride a bike. And some people say, oh, wow, look at you. You can ride a bike. And then when I got a job, they say you're not making enough money. And then some people say you're making enough money. And then when I quit my job, they said, you can't quit your job. You can't survive without a job. Well, 10 years and going. So I think I'm doing pretty good. So you have to define is basically what Mac is trying to say about me, is that I have defined what my direction is. Now, I don't typically talk like that around people who aren't my friends. Dr. Jackie is a good friend of mine, and Mac is a good friend of mine, and we playfully go about things, um, with each other. But in the real world, you find your place and you find where you want to go from there. I decided I wanted to do real estate. I never wanted to do real estate when I was younger, but I said, I'm gonna do real estate. And I did it. And it was a great experience. And I said, well, precious metals, gold, silver, platinum, palladium, I want to own some of that. And I did it. And it's because I defined for me, I didn't let the TV define me. I didn't let my friends define me. And in actuality, while my friends were going out partying, um, okay, I went out and partied sometime too, because I DJ'd my way through college, but that was to make money. So I took those assets, those things that I was generating, and I bought gold, I bought real estate, I bought stocks and mutual funds and CDs, all those things that I was taught by one system to become financially free. But then I had to make a decision. Well, I had to ask myself a question. Am I financially free?
hmm,
And what exactly does that mean?
exactly,
Mm.
exactly. And you
Yeah.
do have to define it. Again, what does it mean? What does it mean for you? What does it mean for your family? And not just throwing out words.
Yeah, well, can you be financially free? In some countries, when you buy a house, you don't pay tax on that house every year until you die. Only in this country, United States, that I know of. I don't know about Europe, so I'm just talking about the United States. You can pay cash for a house, but you got to pay taxes forever. But what do you buy that you have to pay taxes forever other than a house? So I'm always up in the air about, do I want to pay cash for this house when I got to pay taxes? And if I don't pay the taxes, they come take the house. So
Mhm.
maybe I don't want to put all my money in a house. Maybe I want to put it somewhere else. So these are some of the questions that I ask myself,
Mhm.
as I go through building, and understanding what money is, what wealth is, what rich is, you know, things like that.
So I talked about me early on in one of our podcasts that um, getting into the whole finances was very foreign to me. I am a speech language pathologist by trade. So in the schools, I'm doing liberal arts kinds of things, the Englishes, the literatures, etc. Math was not my forte. As a matter of fact, as speech language pathologist, we all tease. We can talk circles around you, but we can't count beyond whatever. So, it's just a little joke, but it wasn't my forte. So when I think about finances, I think I've got to be able to really manipulate the numbers and have a full understanding. Guess what? Guess what? I found out you didn't really need all that. You needed to understand some concepts. And we all have the ability to understand concepts. I found out that this information was held on like it was well, it was a secret, but this big secret that we wouldn't be able to handle. And I was taking in that information and believing I couldn't handle it. Yet I was getting, as Dennis mentioned, these degrees, but I couldn't handle this. Guess what? We all can handle it. You take it in small chops, and then you get that bite in, understand it, and move on. And so I had to change my impression of me as it related to financial information. I had to agree that I could learn this. I could be a manager of my own money with understanding. It goes beyond balancing a checkbook, which of course nowadays people don't even do. But it goes to understanding concept. And I can do that just like anybody else.
Wow. I was just reflecting on the things that you both shared, and it actually took me back to my childhood because, to your point, Dr. Jackie, out of all the subjects growing up, math was my worst subject. And I would have never imagined that, first of all, I would even be on a program like this, but also that I spent most of my working career in public accounting. so it took me back to uh, sitting at the kitchen table with my father, and my father would drill fractions and decimals. I mean, you could be sitting and eating breakfast, and then he'll say, "Well, what's 10% of this?" Or what's the square root of that? I mean, just out of nowhere, right? So it was like living with a in a constant state of pop quizzing. And honestly, I was like, man, I ain't going to use none of this. And to find out, once I actually figured out how I could actually make a legitimate career, I started in just being administrative, uh, um, doing a little bookkeeping, filing, and all that kind of stuff. And then the next thing you know, I'm working for a top five CPA firm where I'm managing our partners' ledgers.
Wow.
And I thought about it one day when I was sitting around in a meeting, and I was thinking about it because I was sitting around with all these guys that have all those consonants behind their name, just like you, Dr. Jackie. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a college dropout. And here I am, and these guys are listening to my recommendations. And I thought about it, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of explore this today, because how many of our audience are sitting around in kind of a mental bondage because they feel like I can't save money. They feel like I don't think I'm worthy enough to even think about investing. I don't think that I'll ever be able to consider creating a college fund, or uh, I don't even want to think about retirement. And a lot of those feelings have come because of things that have been passed on from generation to generation. And I tease Dennis all the time, so I want our audience to know, just like he said, we do all this stuff for fun, because we've known each other for a long time. So when we throw out those things, they are definitely just to joke around. But to really be serious, how many people have said things to our audience and they've not been joking around? And those things get locked into us, and without even realizing it, we're in a mental bondage because we just feel like we can never ever progress. We can never ever think about wealth. And I hope Dennis goes into his definition of the difference between being rich and wealthy. But in all these things, a lot of times we're operating out of the way that we've been programmed. And
Exactly.
so I'm glad that we're having this conversation so we can go in depth into how to so-called break the chain, and to Dennis's point, to understand what financial freedom really means. And in fact, freedom in general, what that really means.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I like to put everything down to a word, one word actually, opportunity. I went to school for electrical engineering because I wanted to be actually I wanted to be a music producer, which sounds kind of strange, but I wanted to be an engineer, music engineer. They throw around that word engineer so much, but electrical engineering is a long way from music engineering. And I didn't know that at the time. I didn't have anyone to tell me, but somewhere in my path, I hung around the fine arts building and I learned about musicians and musicianship and engineering, trying to combine the two. And I had to work through college. And someone walked up to me one day and said, "Hey, why don't you try this?" And I was like, "No, I'm already in school. I already have a full-time job." And if any of you out there have worked and gone to college, you know the difficulties of trying to go to school and work. The schedules never work to your benefit.
Right.
But I looked at at what he had offered me, the situation that he'd offered me, and I was like, no, I'm right here at campus. No. So he pulled out his paycheck. And when he pulled out his paycheck, the only thing I saw was opportunity. Uh, the numbers on his paycheck were 4 times bigger than the numbers on my paycheck, and it was October. We still had 2 months to go. And I said, "Hey, it's October. You've made that much money and it's October?" He said, "Oh, yeah, sometimes I make more, sometimes I make less. You want me to set you up?" All I saw was the word opportunity, and I jumped on it. I was a little scared because it was a total change in what I've been used to doing. And my priorities were, I have a baby on the way. I got rent due in a couple days. I need a new car, those the everyday things that we deal with. And when I jumped on it, the first thing the job that I had said was, you can't leave, you're in management. And I'm like, okay, you're right. I can't just leave. If you give me $1,000 raise, and I wasn't talking about 1,000 a month, I was saying 1,000 a year, because this is back when $1,000 was a lot of money. They said no. Well, what would you do? I was going to quadruple my income or accept them giving me $500 a year. So I left. And I never looked back after that. I did not complete my degree. because I couldn't understand how to go back to school to get a degree to make 1/4 of what I was already making. So I was like, something is wrong. I got to think differently about what I'm doing. Um, so I started paying attention to my coworkers who had been doing this job for years and going over their houses and listening to their stories. And that's how I learned how to buy houses on a napkin, not in college, not in any of the real estate classes that I've been in, not in any of the stock classes that I've been in, because I keep myself trying to learn the difference between rich and wealthy. So technically, I was rich. Okay, I was making more money than my counterparts or my classmates who got degrees, who graduate the top of the class. I was making way more than them. So basically, I was rich, but I didn't understand wealthy. I thought I was wealthy until that rapper lost everything. I forgot his name.
Hammer, MC Hammer.
And I'm like, okay, he could lose everything and he had millions. What am I with just million? you know? And I said, okay, both of us were rich, but neither one of us were wealthy. So my next priority was to figure out what rich and wealthy was. So rich is you got all the money you need, but you got to keep working. If you stop working, if you stop rapping, if you stop playing football, if you stop playing basketball, and then you got to work at McDonald's, you were rich. But wealthy is if you can sit on your keister. I heard that word in a movie, so it must sound good. If you can sit down and not have to worry about your bills from month to month without a job, you are now wealthy. Now, I'm not saying you living in a Taj Mahal or a 6-bedroom house or an apartment, but if you don't have to worry month to month what your bills are, you're wealthy. Now, how wealthy is the next thing? You can be 1 year wealthy, which means after a year, you got to go back to work. You can be 10 years wealthy. So far I've been 10 years wealthy because I haven't worked in 10 years. Or you can be wealthy for a lifetime. And of course, you don't know that until the lifetime is over. But it's not so much as how much you make, it's how much you keep. It's not so much how much you save, it's how you make your money work for you. So that's my blurb to Mac. Hopefully I continued on his vein of thought.
This concludes part 1 of our topic, changing our mindsets in the financial environment. Remember to please subscribe to our YouTube channel at Fueling Future Generations. Also, reach out to us via email at fuelingfuturegenerations2020@gmail.com. On behalf of Dennis, Dr. Jackie, and Mac, we thank you for watching our broadcast today, and we look forward to sharing even more next week.